Hello everyone and welcome back to Seeker's Corner. Today we're looking at part 2 of my look at Believe the Bible, Affirmation of God. This is a video put out by the World Video Bible School, and it is a lot of questions that are attempting to be a philosophical lead-in to God exists, and I assume we will eventually get to the Christian God exists, but I'm a little worried they'll just assume it's the God of the Bible at the end of the story. Or that will be the next video in the series. However they want to go with it. Part 1, we went through about 5 minutes, closer to 6 minutes of the video, and today we're going to pick up there. We'll see how far we get, because this is one of those that is densely packed with thousands upon thousands of questions. And let's get right into it.
Now let's look at our next section together. Every effect must have a sufficient cause.
This is not a bad statement. Let's just hope sufficient isn't assumed to mean superior or greater in some way.
Is the existence of the universe greater than the existence of a house? Well, sure.
So, for those who haven't seen it or don't remember, in the previous section, he was talking about how houses must have builders, and therefore the universe probably should as well, although I believe that is what this particular story is going to focus on more anyways. So is the existence of the universe greater than the existence of a house? Well, the universe is the set of all things contained within the space-time we currently reside in, so the universe contains houses. They're not exactly comparable either. The universe is made of space and time, as well as matter and energy, and houses are primarily matter. So I'm not certain there's much of a comparison here to be made, but let's see where he goes.
Surely you would say yes. When we examine the solar system and the many systems that make up our universe, the sun and the planets, the stars, we all know that that is greater than a house. So let's look at the next question.
Like I said, I don't 100% agree with him. The universe contains houses, but I'm not certain there is a meaningful comparison to exist there.
Do you believe that it would be impossible for the universe to create itself?
Do I believe it's impossible for the universe to create itself? No, I don't. And you might think that's crazy. But since when has the universe been required to follow our logic and our beliefs? So I answered the question, but I have one more statement to point out. Notice he's assuming a creator. The neutral version of this question is, do you believe that it would be impossible for the universe to be the cause of its own existence? And again, the answer here is, no. I don't believe it would be impossible. I don't believe it would be possible either. I am in the I don't know category for this one. One way that a universe may be its own cause is documented in paper is can the universe create itself? And if we're looking down here at the bottom, we come to the conclusion that a universe with CTCs, which are closed time-like loops, or closed time-like circles, I should say, can be stable against vacuum polarization, and it can be classically stable and self-consistent. Basically, this paper shows that given our knowledge of relativity and space-time, it is possible that the beginning of the universe was a loop, a temporal loop. So the universe created itself. Here is a simple depiction of it. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit. And you can see here that a bit of the expanding universe early on came off, made a loop, and then came back up to create this universe, and other small ones popped off from there. If we looked at this paper all the way at the bottom where the conclusion is, you'll see that they are well aware there are plenty of problems with their models. But the important point here is that it's technically possible, whether or not it ever actually happened. Thus, we can say that the universe may have actually created itself, or given rise to itself. The best part about this is there is no need for a first cause. As you travel backwards in time, you always find a new cause for each and every event, all the way around into an endless loop. And I believe that is all I have to say about this component. In other words, it is possible that the universe created itself, but it is not necessary, as this is just one model proposed by two people. Alright, so we have a universe that may or may not have created itself, And of course, he's going to assume that it could not. Let's move forwards.
Well, I've never seen anything create itself. We've established the fact that a house does not appear out of nothing. The answer would be yes. Wouldn't it be impossible for the universe to have come from nothing?
Well, this depends entirely on what you mean by nothing. If you mean a philosophical nothing, we have no evidence such a thing could even have existed at one time. If you mean anything else, then it would all completely depend on what your nothing is. Let's see what he defines it as, and we will move from there.
Well, the principle of nothing produces nothing makes this answer very simple. It's yes. Look at the next question.
So he says yes, and in this case, I believe it is correct, because he is talking about a philosophical nothing. However, there are no models of the universe that show a philosophical nothing as the origin, even if they use the term nothing. There are no models that have literal nothing, but we do have some models of the universe that have something quite close. Dr. Lawrence Krauss has a book called Universe from Nothing, which is one of the reasons why a lot of people tend to say, well, you think a universe came from nothing. However, here we're going to have Lawrence Krauss explaining what he means by nothing. And I would like to argue that a lot of physicists actually mean something similar to this. Perhaps not exactly the same thing.
In fact, nothing can be unstable. Now, what do I mean by that? We've discovered that empty space, which is for most people nothing, you take a region of space and you get rid of all the particles and all the radiation, so there's nothing there. First of all, we've discovered one of the most amazing things is that if you get rid of everything, that empty space actually weighs something. We don't really even understand why, but we have some inklings because we know, because of quantum mechanics and relativity, at a fundamental level, empty space is a boiling, bubbling brew of virtual particles that are popping in and out of existence in a time scale so short you can't see them. Now that sounds like philosophy. It sounds like counting angels on the head of a pin, but it's not. Because while we can't see those virtual particles directly, we can see their effects indirectly. In fact, we can calculate their effects, and they affect the properties of atoms in a calculable way. And including those effects has led to the best predictions in all of science. We can compare our theoretical models with observation and get agreement to 9 decimal places. Nowhere else in science can we do that from first principles, predict something to that kind of accuracy, but we only get the right answer if we include the effect of these weird virtual particles. So as crazy as it is, it's true.
So, as crazy as it is, nothing is in fact something. Why did I bring this up? Because it's a major misunderstanding by a lot of people, and I think it needed to be said. So, could the universe have come from nothing? Well, a potential bubbling brew of virtual particles? Yes, it could have come from that, in the right way.
Wouldn't it be equally impossible for a man to have created the universe?
No, actually. We could be a simulation. And the theory of an ancestor simulation would have us being a simulation made by future humans who wanted to know something about our time period. Maybe they wanted to know how a resurgence of a belief in the flat earth would affect public discourse across the early 21st century. And so they made the simulation and caused it to happen where it didn't happen in their universe. This would be a very good way of having a man create our universe. It's not impossible by any means. It is far from likely, but we know computers exist. We know simulations exist. We know people make simulations of things they want to learn about. In other words, everything that was required is in fact something we know really happened. So it's not impossible for a man to create the universe. I think it's fairly unlikely, but not impossible.
Now, remember back to our question about an infant creating a house, and we made the point that an infant doesn't have the ability, the capability to create a house. So you would never believe that an infant created a house.
While an infant might lack the ability to create a house, I think I've just suggested that the ability to create a simulated universe is at least within the possibilities of mankind. So, no, not a problem.
But look at the universe. Wouldn't it be impossible to say that a man could create the universe? Do you have the power to create the universe? I know I certainly don't.
Yeah, but I know computer programmers who have done a pretty good job at creating a universe. And if we want to get really off the deep end, I've read books so good that I have effectively created a universe in my mind. Probably more to the point, video games have pulled this off. And will continue to do so as we get better and better at creating them. Who knows? Maybe one day you will have to ask the question, did I plug into the VR system and forgot about it?
And so the answer is obviously yes. Must the builder of the universe come from outside the universe itself?
This is another one where it's like, kind of. First off, it's not a big deal that he's assuming a builder. here because that's literally what the question is about, but I just felt like pointing it out again. And then we have, wouldn't the builder come from its own universe? Like, even if it's God, he would have to exist within some sort of separate universe prior to the creation of our own. What would it even mean to exist outside of any universe? It seems like existence is dependent on space and time, at least. You need a location in space and time to exist. So, if we look at a universe as a single extension of space and time, then yeah, you kind of have to exist inside a universe to exist. But yes, if you're going to construct something, you can't do it while standing in something that has yet to come to be. So this is another yes. Let's hope he doesn't completely mangle it on the other side.
Let's examine this question very briefly. Since the universe can't create the universe, then we would
The universe can create the universe. We've talked about that this very episode.
say that something outside of the universe had to create it. With that being said, must the builder of the universe be greater in ability and power than the universe?
No. The builder of the universe must have the capability or the tools to build the universe. Assuming, of course, there is one to begin with. A builder, that is. In the last video, I showed how a lightning bolt can start a forest fire and release more energy than the lightning bolt itself contained. This is also true of a whole host of things that both intelligent and non-intelligent things can do. A avalanche being triggered by a single rock slipping free and knocking others out of position as well is another good example. I would argue that a piece of music created by an artist or a songwriter can certainly have more power and more impact than the individual who wrote it. Think of all the covers from your favorite songs. One person wrote that song, but now it's being remembered and rephrased and redone for decades after the person has moved on or even died. And yet we're still enjoying them. Think of all the classical pieces that have been around for hundreds of years. They had great power and ability to move people emotionally. And since we are talking about an intelligent being creating creating something, this is an accurate portrayal. So no, not at all.
Well, going back to our previous questions, we know that an infant couldn't build a house. We know that a man couldn't build the universe. So we know that the universe has to have a creator with greater ability and power than just a simple man or woman.
No, we don't have to know that. And he said woman there if you couldn't hear it. I paused it too quickly.
So the answer is yes. Now, must that builder of the universe be older than the universe?
Here's a really interesting one. And the question is, that depends on how you count time. Remember, we pointed out that a builder of outside of the universe would likely be in his own universe, at least in any way that makes logical sense. So some builder would have their own flow of time. Take that computer programmer who created a simulation of a universe to learn about how flat earth ideology affects social growth. It wouldn't do them any good if they have to sit around and wait for 20 years to get 20 years worth of data. So they will, of course, create a universe that runs at a higher rate of speed than the one they currently exist in. So, for instance, in the first hour of running their universe, a whole year has gone by. By the end of 3 days, a whole lifetime of people in the simulated universe has gone by. And yet the creator has only experienced 3 days. It's very likely that there are people in that universe that's now run for 70 years that are older than the creator of said universe itself. They just ran across a different timeline. This remains true even if you aren't talking about a computer simulation, but a universe with literal magic, and they just created a pocket universe through incantations and enchantments. Remember, we don't know what the rules of some external universe is, only what the rules of our own universe. So, no, the builder of a universe does not need to be older than the universe itself.
So we're asking, does the builder have to predate the universe? Well, obviously, yes.
So if we're talking about predate, yes, but not necessarily be older. Older implies an element of experience or continuous existence, where predate just means you had to come before. Technically speaking, a god that created the universe and then died would predate our universe. They just wouldn't necessarily be older than it.
The builder of a house would have to be older than the house. And these are conclusions that are demanded by evidence, sound reasoning. Now, with these facts being established, look at the next one. Does the fact that we apply a date to the universe imply it had a beginning and therefore has not always existed?
Oh boy. Einstein's theories of relativity tell us that space and time are interconnected. We have confirmed all sorts of predictions by relativity, including that one's motion and position in space can affect the rate at which you progress through time. Basically, if you move really fast or are really close to a lot of mass, you move through time slightly slower relative to slower and more distant objects. One really good proof of this are GPS satellites. All GPS satellites are affected by relativity. This is from Ohio State. Getting through this quickly. Here is the section that matters the most. As viewed from Earth, the clocks on GPS satellites are going faster than ground-based ones by 45 microseconds per day. And while the ones on the ground have a slightly different effect for being closer to Earth, this works out to be about 38 microseconds per day in total. And because GPS satellites are so high precision, they actually have to compensate for this. In fact, it would only take 2 minutes without compensating for time dilation for your position on the globe to be in error. And after a full day, you would be off by 10 kilometers. 10 kilometers based on the difference in time. Why talk about this? Because relativity predicts this and is required to compensate for this problem. Thus, relativity's view of time as being a part of space gives evidence in favor of B theories of time, which view the past and the future as being no different than 1 kilometer to your left and 1 kilometer to your right. In this view, having a measuring system has no impact on whether or not what you're measuring was created. Take a flattish rock and a table. Does the existence of a left edge on both the table and the rock provide evidence that they were created? Of course not. The reason we believe the table to be created is because we know how they are created, not because it has an edge. And this is the thing we have to understand. Because we have an edge to the universe we may or may not call time equals 0, does not mean the universe even began to exist. It could simply be a necessary being, and that being consists of everything us puny mortals would call past, present, and future. Now let's hear his poor answer to this question.
The year 2020 applies or implies that the universe can be dated. We take the date back. There's a reason we do that. Because most people of sound reasoning, they acknowledge the fact that the universe had to have a beginning.
Did anything I say not sound like sound reasoning? If we take the B theory of time, the universe does not have to have a beginning. It may have, but it doesn't have to. It's not a necessity. So no.
If it's not possible for material things like matter, tables, chairs, buildings, to be eternal, is it possible for non-material power like mind or spirit to be eternal?
Okay, let's actually go back just a tad and see if we can't take a look at that question. If it's not possible for material things, as in matter, to be eternal, is it possible for non-material power like mind or spirit to be eternal? Well, first you would have to prove to me that the mind is distinct from matter and energy in your brain. Or I guess matter and energy in your skull, but whatever. Or you would have to prove to me that this spirit thing is a thing separate from our minds, which, as I just pointed out, I don't see them being anything more than a process of the brain. But we have this. First law of thermodynamics. Energy can neither be created nor destroyed. Hey guys, do you not realize that matter and energy are the same thing? The equation E equals mc squared is not just a cutesy little equation. It says energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. So you can convert between mass and energy. Matter and energy are the same thing. So the first law of thermodynamics is telling us that the material world, matter and energy altogether, has to have been eternal in some form or function. Interestingly enough, this is exactly what we see in all models of the universe that I know of. You have a potential energy somewhere that eventually expands and becomes the universe. Or you have a bubbling chaos that is the quantum vacuum, and it splits into a negative energy and a positive energy. And together that is zero, thus conserving the total amount of energy in the universe. But then again, we also have to take this last thing. The first law of thermodynamics is not prescriptive. Because humans have said that energy cannot be created or destroyed, does not mean the universe suddenly cannot create or destroy energy. It means we are not aware of a scenario in which a closed system can create or destroy energy. There's a lot more I could say about this, but let's move ahead and see what he actually says. Somehow, I fear we aren't going to learn anything helpful to his cause, I should say.
To be eternal. Now, this is an excellent question. So we know these things are not eternal. Now I'm asking you to consider something totally different. I'm asking you to consider, is it possible for there to be an energy that could be eternal?
But here's the problem. You aren't asking about energy to be eternal. You're asking about things that either are matter and energy as we know them to be eternal, i.e. the mind, or something we have no evidence of to be eternal, as in the spirit. That's not the same thing by any stretch of the imagination. I'm going to note here that energy has a definition. In physics, it's the capacity for doing work. It may exist in potential, kinetic, thermal, electric, chemical, nuclear, or other various forms. What you're doing here is equivocating on the definition of energy. When a scientist talks about energy, they are talking about the capacity to do work, either the process of doing work, the transferring of said energy from one place to another, the motion of molecules, or the oscillations of electromagnetic waves. They're not talking about anything else. And so using energy to describe something that is not any of those things is dishonest in this context. And because context is always important, we can't overlook this issue. You started this off with an appeal to the first law of thermodynamics. So I have to assume you're talking about scientific energy, in which case you would need verifiable and repeatable evidence of something other than the already defined energies, and you just don't have that. So, is it possible for non-material power to be eternal? Well, first, you need to prove that a non-material thing exists, and you have not done that. So no, it is not possible, at least to our current knowledge and understanding. As always, we are limited by what we actually understand and know. Let's move forwards.
The answer here would be yes, that is possible. Now, you've probably heard of the scientific laws called the laws of thermodynamics.
I think we'd already covered this, but let's see what he has to say.
The first law of thermodynamics, energy can neither be created or destroyed. Did you realize that science itself teaches that it is possible for a non-material power, like a mind or spirit and energy, to be eternal?
Oh my goodness. He's not just implying his false equivalence, he's explicitly stating it. I had far too much faith in him. No. Science does not say a quote-unquote non-material power can do anything. Energy as in the capacity to do work, and matter are equivalent. They have an equal sign between them. You can convert matter into energy, usually in the form of gamma rays, and you can turn energy into matter through the force of several nuclear processes. We know energy and matter exist. We know space and time exist. We don't have anything else. So if by non-material you mean space and time, but I don't know what good that does you. The mind cannot be proven to be independent of the brain. Otherwise, you would have some way to demonstrate a mind independent of substrate. Hopefully this doesn't get worse.
I mean, this is scientific law. If we called that power God, would it be possible that God could be eternal and also the builder of the universe?
If we called that power God, that power you have yet to define, you have yet to prove existed, but the power you have done nothing but claim exists. Yeah, no, I'm not calling that God. You have everything left to prove because you have proved nothing. At best, at the absolute best, you've argued that there's a chance the universe has been created, but you have failed to provide any evidence of who, what, or even that the universe was created. So, no. If we call that power God, no. Just no.
Well, the answer would have to be yes. Once again, we're just asking if this is possible, and we're basing our conclusions on our reasoning abilities from the evidence. Now, once again, let me point.
What evidence? You haven't provided any. This has all been common sense. You know, that one phrase that exists entirely to complain about how people don't have it. So no, you haven't argued for you haven't provided evidence for the existence of God just yet.
Point out a Bible passage that just confirms this principle. Now, you don't have to believe the Bible to understand that the principle being stated is accurate. Psalm 19, verse 1. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows his handiwork.
No, you've just quoted a Bible passage that requires you to believe in God to make any sense. I don't believe in God. Yes, stars and planets and stuff are amazing. They even inspire awe. But to be the handiwork of God, well, you'd have to show that God actually did something, not just claim it. You need to show, not tell. You need to provide evidence that points to specifically God, or you need to find a line of arguments and reasoning that point exclusively to the existence of God. So far, you've built your reasoning on a poor foundation. No, God does not have to be more powerful than the universe, or greater in ability than the universe. No, causes do not have to be greater than their effects. No, our universe does not have to be created by something non-material. No, it is actually possible for man to create a universe, at least in theory. And no, we have no reason to believe that there is anything other than matter, energy, space, and time. It sounds like we're at the end of the recording, because we are. Part 3 will have to come in a couple of weeks, so that, there's some variety on this channel. If you like what I've done, please like and subscribe, leave a comment, and let me know what's going on. Please have a wonderful day, and I will see you next time.